Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title is The Light at the End of the Tunnel of Thought, and actually, the title was The Experiential Light at the End of the Tunnel of Thought. Hopefully, my voice is loud enough, loud and clear. Okay. Hopefully, the microphone of the headphone is tapped in. It's not an Apple microphone, but hopefully, I think it's tapped in right now, so the voice should be louder. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So, the idea that kind of approached me was that I wondered about a bridge, and I wondered if there was in the middle of a bridge a curtain dividing the bridge. And the bridge was a sort of one-way path where you had to only go forward and you had reached the veil. And so I was entertaining this concept, and then I kind of wondered about, because I was born in 1991, something of a metaphysical discussion, at least, of popularity was the light at the end of the tunnel. I was raised in the East, and of course, I came at a young age here. But I'm telling you that the kind of ideology I was acquainted at a young age, and I was raised in Iran till the age of 7, and came to Canada and then went back and forth. But I'm telling you, the ideology was first of all, I don't know how many people know this, but um, the Book of Islam acknowledges it's like the message is not being given to just humans, it's being given to humans in another dimension. And many ideologies have wondered about this veil of thought, if there is one. You know, the modern scientific version of the veil of thought is the portal, the Stargate. But it's pretty much where the knowledge reaches its edge and the unknown appears, right? And at least in my experience, I have found that at the edge of a certain thought or any thought, there comes a realm of experience that is non-dual. So after some point, my relationship with language was like I just stepped back, stepped a little bit outside of the language that was defining my life, and then I realized knowledge is more about freedom, freedom to know than what to know. And freedom is not just an external idea. Somebody can be free externally, but they could be enslaved to their past. You know, they could be enslaved to their mistakes. They could be enslaved to their guilt. They could be enslaved to various thoughts that have kind of become them. You know, sometimes the thought is holding on to you, and sometimes you're holding on to the thought, and the discrimination between that makes you a conscious being. So, anyways, let's get into this. So, this concept of a Stargate, I remember in one of my earlier talks, I kind of explained like how cool would it be, or how unique would it be, or it's kind of like one of those questions of mine that if a person kind of saw a portal, a Stargate now, consider this portal where they don't know what other world is on the other side, if they entered it not with their face, like they entered it with from their shoulder, if you know what I mean, is as if like the guy walking like straight into the portal, he walks into the portal sideways, goes until the portal is right on his like the middle of his body. So in some sense, on one side of the portal is half of his body, and on the other side is a half of the body. And so what that means is the two eyes are seeing from both dimensions, right? So I always wondered, like, what would the psychology of someone who's kind of like, I don't know if I painted the picture well, but who is looking between dimensions. That means you kind of realize there's a known aspect to the intelligence, and there's an unknown. There's a known and an unknown aspect. Now, the thing with the unknown is in ancient times, pretty much after, like, I'm kind of making these kind of, I guess, conclusions out of my own journeys into the history of thought on this planet. But I kind of realized that it was pretty much religion, metaphysics, spirituality, any of these kind of abstract disciplines, you can say, because it requires a discipline, like of keeping your attention on the abstract, you know. Pretty much, I find stories are meant to keep the unknown alive. If the unknown factor of the human life leaves the person, literally, if you know everything in the moment, you don't have a reason to exist. So anytime any sensible person like a personality of you feels it knows everything in the moment, know that soon you're going to feel empty. You know, you can't hold on to knowledge. The thing is, it's too dynamic. We are kind of acknowledging the world as if it's a picture on a wall, but the world is a movie, and it has unknown elements, unknown directives in it. You know, that means I'm like, okay, call it the will of God or call it the laws of the cosmos. You know, regardless of what lens, the phenomena is one. That means we are all on this planet, but there's different words we use to call it. You know, in different languages. So what it is from one commonality has extended the uncommon, you know. And I personally have realized, like, at first it was like, okay, you're in the known. So I kind of thought about it. I'm like, you know how they say history repeats itself? So I'm like, wait a minute. What if this repetition is like a spiral, or better yet, like a sine wave? You know, so it's kind of going like it has peaks and troughs, you know, kind of like a wiggly line, you know. So as I looked at this and I was like, okay, so it means like there's certain moments in history where everybody thought like there were gods walking on clouds, you know. Then suddenly it came back down. You know, now we all feel like, oh, God's on clouds. Don't be ridiculous. We believe in atoms that are 99.9% empty. You know? So what it is it's pretty much subjective change, that is constantly trying to explain the objective. But this is what Rene Descartes caught on to. And the West did not see Rene Descartes' theory of dualism, but for example, the Cartesian plane is so key in mathematics. That means it's like sometimes there were treasures in this world that even though they were found, people still did not see the treasure. You know, it's kind of like Lao Tzu, this Chinese philosopher, would say. It's this strange quote. Like, I remember, like, when I heard it, it took me a while for the quote to settle in. Truly, excuse me, guys. All right, to continue. Um, Rene Descartes' mind body dualism was so crucial to as a point, because it was kind of suggesting that man's intelligence could be separate. Now, of course, we got to realize it's like, you know what it's like? It's like the same seeds are planted on the surface of the earth, you know, and it's like similar seeds are planted and they constantly keep sprouting. That means there was a time where I got caught in the nihilistic trap. Western society, mainly due to the materialism being promoted, will eventually lead to a sort of nihilism. That means this is why hedonism makes sense. This is why that YOLO mindset, you only live once, go do whatever the fuck you want to do. Like that mindset is a kind of reaction to an inevitable emptiness. So you see, here's the where the advantage and disadvantage begins, where how you entered the room, or in another way, how your mind began to animate its cause. So in some sense, it became an incredible mystery for me, and the Rubik's Cube was that if what I see now is the effect, the cause is unknown, but if this is the cause, then in some sense, the effect in some sense can be known, but as long as I'm the cause, the effect's unknown. It's literally like we're running between different rooms in our mind conceptually, and these rooms conceptually each are kept by a duality, a sort of dualism, a polarity. So you got to understand, I'm speaking to you in what I consider to be the linguistic simulation. I'm using the technology of language. I treat language as a technology, you know. So I'm speaking through an Iron Man suit, and this Iron Man suit is limited to dualism. You cannot literally, if you can't refer to something, you can't say it. This is why the enlightenment experience, literally nobody could talk about it, because it was instantaneous. Instantaneous means no time, no space. It's just its presence and action is the same. So believe it or not, really there isn't much you can say about the non conceptual, that which is attributeless. The best thing you can do is say, look in the mirror and you'll notice it. But after one looks at it, they'll eventually, I find enlightenment, or not enlightenment, let me say evolution, to be a kind of spiral. That means it's reacting off its own action, and its action is curved. So think of it this way. Are you meant to have in one moment of your life an image of yourself and have that image be your whole life? Or are you meant to have a life where various waves of data approach you every day? For me, it's kind of like this is what I realized. Mastery was something that it was as if after the games of fear were played and finished. That means, like fear is a lack of awareness to presence. That means when you feel you're not there, there's a fear. Anytime you sometimes, like, I don't know how to say it, but there is one fear that, if conquered, is strangely makes it kind of easy. And it is, I kind of gave a talk on it. I don't remember the exact title, but it was about cosmic solitude. This cosmic solitude is so key because it means the mind cannot move the body unless the body has a reason, right? This is strange, but I'm telling you, your mind has to move itself before your body does. But your mind is so instantaneous that you don't even see its movement, and it becomes instinct, right? Now, when I say the mind is an abstract concept, but usually we're introduced to the concept of instinct as animalistic, biological. But here's the thing, I find that the purpose of evolution was for matter to become thought. That's the thing. That means enough sophistication to be designed that the design becomes aware of itself. Do you see? So what it is really, this life is all about self-awareness. You look at people and you see that, what is this? Like, I was thinking, why are all these gurus promoting love? Is love what the world needs, or does it need the restructuring and re-engineering of its just blueprint of just like how the whole thing should move? I thought, does the intellect need to help, or does the heart, does the brain need to fight for humanity, or does the heart? I wondered about this, and through certain intuitive karmic winds, I soon realized that no thought in any moment can conquer the world. So you see, the issue is not that there is God or not. It's just that a temporary creature where its environment, its relationship with its environment is brings about this sort of linguistic simulation, this evocation. I don't know how to tell you, but it's like sometimes when I was younger, my grandmother would pray. So my grandfather and me and my brother would kind of like, we were young kids, we would pray beside them. And it was a very unique thing because for us, I realize every time I pray, the emotion is different. It's as if every time there was that kind of prayer thing, I was like, okay, this is a different me there, right? So who is praying for what? It's as if like I pray in this moment, yo, I want this universe, and then and then next moment I've become totally somebody else and I want another thing. So what happens is it's not that people have the same prayer, it's that people are endlessly wanting and expecting things, right? And believe it or not, prayer was a way of the religious system to preserve the ego, because prayer is wanting. When you want something, that means you want to be something. Why else would you want it? You know? It's as if I remember I was walking in the park and I found a moment where I was just looking at my own body. And for a second, I wanted to salute all the cells of my being. And it was a moment where I realized it's as if this is the hands that Stardust gave me, you know? These are what I mean by that, like the poker hand, you know? Like cards, you know? So it's like the cards you're dealt, the way manifestation has arose. And for a long time, I would allow the past to constantly push around my future until I was like, believe it or not, after some point you get bored and you evolve, you know? It's like they asked this guy, why did you get enlightened? And he's like, I got bored. I got bored and I wondered about the ultimate, you know? You know, I'm going to do something kind of playful here. I have this vision of something that I feel will happen whether I'm around for it or not, but it's kind of interesting to talk about it, bring it to light. Is that you see, guys, something incredible is happening. And what this is that human beings have become more isolated, and technology has even helped them become more isolated. But in their isolation, they have found a dead end. What that means is literally the biological existence is necessary. So it's as if when you care for human beings, imagine right now, me and you and I don't know, let's say everybody who's listening, we all were on some like advanced spaceship that was built on Earth by our scientists, and we went and we found a civilization younger than ours. And it's as if we're like, wow, this civilization it reminds us of the youth of our own civilization, you know? And so we start caring for it. And here's the thing, when you care for someone, usually people think it just means caring about their language and their physicality. But when you care for a person truly, what it means is you're caring for the unknown potential of their mind. This is why I realized it was kind of like a kind of like like lightning kind of like struck my wrong belief. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things where I noticed that sometimes in order for us to feel validated, we're willing to push the world. You know? It's kind of like when you're younger, you pull the world towards you. When you're older, you're trying to kind of push it, you know? And here's the thing that I wondered, if the concept of violence never existed, how would the world be? And I realized it's one of those things that the only way can be through consciousness. Literally, the being has to be conscious. So what that means is, believe it or not, I like how the New Age community is holding hands and thinking they're all the oneness of the cosmos. But certain future advancements will not develop unless we have our attention on the right things, right? So it's kind of that thing where I'm kind of realizing that we have to reinvent the ethos of the civilization, literally the global inspiration. Literally, children are born and they're like, okay, what is this place? Where am I? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning? And then suddenly a voice comes. It's the voice of their civilization. It's to help out. And so that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to say. That there is. It's not hope. I don't want you to confuse what I'm saying with hope. Because hope is only necessary when it's one dimension. But when you enter a reality where there's many parallel realities, hope doesn't hope doesn't become relevant, because there's other options. So literally the attention can think of it this way, like just like how you have sat. Imagine like right now I'm sitting on a chair. So imagine like I'll use myself as an example. Like just like how I've sat on this chair right now, my mind has in some sense sat in the moment in a certain way, has opened up, accepted, referred, even like, it's like the mind is kind of like a machine. When you open the subconscious, like the hood of the car, you see the engine of the unconscious running. And what that means is, like, of course I'm animating it playfully, but what that means is there's mysteries behind what we know and beyond what we know. And so, what kind of civilization are we creating? You think this civilization is creating explorers, or is it creating people who just are like, this world is too hard to live in? Oh. It's like, on some level, yeah, I understand suffering, but I was like, there was a time where I got mad at the Buddha. You can say the moment where Mr.Within got mad at Buddha. And I got mad because I'm like, Buddha, okay, I understand there's suffering. But you have, by wanting to bring a solution to suffering, made people endlessly pay attention to suffering. So it's as if you're living many moments in this life where how is the attention moving and how is the attention being? How the attention moves tends to relate to your doership. So how you're a sense of a doer, DOEER. I find that there will open up schools like the School of Athens, but it's going to be different. You see, I find that this is the cool thing. 4 billion years of evolution has brought us to a point where we have a sophisticated use of emotional intelligence, a sophisticated use of objective intelligence, and a sophisticated use of subjective intelligence. And of course, all alongside all these, everything we see in this visual reality with our biological eyes is a certain range, a certain wavelength of the color spectrum. What does that mean? That means we are seeing a tiny percentage of the picture. That means we're not just using, as certain scientists suggested in certain articles, just a tiny percentage of the brain. Like dolphins are using more of their brain than us. But it's just the fact that vision, if it doesn't know itself, will not hear the universal command. That's the thing. At some point in life, you're going to get serious about how existence is being experienced, and you're going to notice yourself in an instant. That instantaneity is not it, like you don't have to endlessly have sentences. The mind tends to, like, you can say a hungry philosopher is like a mind that wants to consume endless language, right? So even though I speak, like, I hope that you realize, dear listener, that behind every word is an image, and behind that image is your mind. So this is why I say be very playful with language. Be very playful with communication. When you hear someone say something, don't assume, um, uh, don't feel you can see the roots of the tree from the branches. That's another way of saying every person in this world has deeper dimensions that meet the eye. Like it's as if it's not visible. Just like how there's, again, observable wavelength of color and sensory perception, there's also the unobservable. Similarly, the intelligence of the being is like that too. But the uniqueness is that when ideal, like we gotta, the playgrounds, like the level one is individual objective conscious being. Okay. Um, the issue is this. Let's hope the right brush finds me right now. Okay, if we were to playfully give levels to the development, or let's say certain phases of evolution could be levels in the psychological development, first we got to realize history is a long biological process. Consciousness steps out, relates, and then steps back into the unknown. So, what that means is just like how the wave emerges in the ocean and suddenly goes back. Similarly, as you are experiencing an unknown moment, suddenly something comes to you, seems to be known, and then suddenly the known goes back. So this is another playful way where all the Zen masters and everybody who ever saw the sea realize, okay, life is an expression, but it's not an expression. It's a rhythmic expression. When you understand rhythm, there's something very unique. Like this is kind of strange concept to bring about, but if there was a course called mystical rhythmic studies, something like that, I would say that it's crucial, that study, because there's a dangerous thing that could occur in the psychology. I say dangerous to make it exciting, but to be honest, what it is pretty much every action you do in this life, it's either leading towards a reference of efficiency or a reference of inefficiency. That means the way you live is creating memories for you, whether you acknowledge it or not. And these memories are constantly influencing the intensity and texture of how the next action comes about. That means as if somebody who gets pushed has a greater intensity of pushing the other person than somebody who just wants to push from the beginning, right? So it's an intensification. It's like literally you vibe with the environment and a rhythm finds you. And those people who get angry, what it is they find a past personality, literally a memory of them in the past that couldn't do something, feels it can do it now, and it's exploding, you know? So this is why I'm saying it's like the mystics really understood that you use silence and stillness to navigate consciousness out of known and out of known design into the unknown rhythm. Okay, because I'll be honest, it's like I was like, what is this? Every kind of ancient book of wisdom, you go to find the truth. It's undescribable, inconceivable, hidden. Da 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 da. And I'm like, what is this? And eventually, you realize the dance of the mind before you even knew the mind had feet. You know. Oh, hey Idris, how's it going? I just noticed the chat right now. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, rhythms. Um, yeah, man, these rhythms are kind of strange. I find them to be the evolution of knowledge. So, like, imagine the university professor, after teaching the greatest lesson, you'll realize the next greatest lesson is action oriented. That means when you reach the edge of thought, thought pretty much like it, the value of thought is in what action it inspires, and how the world gets sculpted in accordance to that. So oh man, there was a perfect quote. I remember half of it, but it was from the Zen master that said, um, he, it's like this kind of in the Diamond Sutra, something like that says, he walks in the grassland, not moving a single grass. Right? It's as if there was a lot of beautiful Zen poetry in regards to kind of be it, like even in Christianity they say to be in the world but not of it. So that is where the rhythm is occurring, I think, between a moment of feeling you're in the world and between a moment where you feel you're of the world, in of, like constantly this rhythm. And it's like, believe it or not, our minds are generators. I'm convinced. I don't believe the brain is calculating. I believe the brain is just projecting. The brain is the projector, like literally those old school projectors. you know. Um, oh, nice. Yeah, I can tell you it's 91 December 17, 9 a.m. in Iran. Listen, astrology is something where I've met a few people, and uh, believe it or not, it's like I I I intuitively accept it. Literally, in certain intuitive moments where I felt like I had to see that data. I had to see that pattern. Sometimes our experiences are lessons for our subconscious mind. The conscious mind could get bored, but behind the scenes, there's stuff happening, you know. But what do we do? What do we do with rhythm and all this stuff? Yes. You know, in ancient mystical times they had this concept, like pretty much I find Eastern traditions, because they had a sort of faith replacing truth, they moved towards discipline. Western traditions, because they challenged truth, they went towards freedom, right? So the whole thing is between freedom and discipline, and that's what we see in people. It's like pretty much the younger you are, you go towards freedom; the older you are, you go towards discipline. Yet I find it's not a proper incorporation of both elements, and so what that means is it's kind of strange situation, human situation, where when you're younger you have all the energy but not the wisdom, but when you're older you have the wisdom, and then but you don't have the energy. So I was thinking, what does this mean? This has two meanings. Either the universe is flawed, or in some sense our story and narrative is, sometimes you got to let go of the language, just get out of the language and realize it's like a living thing here. The most mystical thing is that the world is alive, and the world is your mind that's here. you okay, Idris, I got to read what you wrote. Just hold on. By the way, guys, I engage with the chat as a good YouTuber does, So if you feel I'm suddenly saying sentences out of place, that's the reason. Okay. Okay, Idris, you have literally sparked an ancient mystical question. Okay, so first of all, I find if everybody's first of all walking through their own world towards any sort of truth, if there is one, right? So it's either the universe was here first, and then the mind. In that sense, you can say astrology is very key. But if the mind was here, then the universe, that means the meaning you give to the universe is coming from the mind. So fundamentally, whatever pattern you extract is a generation or a coagulation of your own experiences. So what I'm saying is, it's like, it's not that I disagree with astrologers, you know? It's just that I know that the meaning that they receive is a mind, is the mind being. Do you see? It's like your mind is here, right? And the mind is not defined by an image, right? So even though it's like you might not believe how many birthdays I have not celebrated, you know? Okay, you got to explain what you mean, and that's a really nice sentence. I'm going to read it for the audience. Idris W in the chat says it means the variety of pain and pleasure is an image of perfection. Yes, but the image of perfection is not for a person. That means there's no person getting it. Think of it as if God already judged you. What then? You know, and this is not this. I'm not saying do not consider there is the eyes of the cosmos watching you. I'm just saying that you got to realize there's a design here. It's inanimate. Our animate intelligence imbues it with meaning. If we imbue meaning, then did that objective phenomena have meaning? Why did Buddha say that the nature of objective phenomena is empty? That means you realize when you put a tea, you know, let's say a cup of tea, warm tea without steam, on the table. Someone looks at it and feels that's like hot, like, you know, warm, like, I don't know, higher temperature tea. Somebody looks at it and thinks it's cold tea. So what it means is the object does not have meaning. It's the eyes that are open that are, in some sense, commanding the meaning into the phenomena. So what it means is self-reflective extraction. Literally, you are like seeing your uh, the idea of yourself in accordance to the object for the narrative to occur, right? So it's a, that's why I'm saying you light a ancient question, because it's one of those things that um I'm telling you, I have like the pretty much it comes down to if your free will has personality. Okay, that's what I find. I feel it's a discussion between divine will and free will. So that means, was the source knowable, or is it unknowable? Spirituality says as long as you're walking as an ego, as an individual, the source is unknowable. You're always like an effect, left as an effect, because you are not even wondering what it would be like to be wondering if the source was the presence. That means it's like sometimes our stories are just masks on the direct experience that's occurring, you know? Excuse me. Okay, guys. So I had accidentally muted this and I was saying something, but I'll just say it like Idris in response to what I was saying to you. Um, you simply see their different programs. You're in the program, you get identified by the program. You step out of the program, you feel you never were a part of this program. This is why we're constantly looking for like that newer self. Like pretty much anybody writes a book about just write newer self and everybody's going to come and buy it because they're like, oh, newer self, right? But I'm saying it's um, we go as far we can externally as much as we can trust and there's conscious ability. Eventually when you can't externally go any consciously further, I find you become static in a different way your consciousness moves, right? So you become more your moment, your like right now if you were in a room right now listening to me and you're like a person in the room right now, imagine becoming the whole space, your attention becoming the whole space of the room, you are within that moment. So I'm saying literally every person, the way the sensory perception at least spatially appears, because we're considering all our senses to be one person, one being, right? All the accumulation of the visual, auditory, and everything else, it's like all this is being one thing. So this one thing, what it does is when it becomes its own reference point, it how can it's how would I say? Sometimes the world needs to be there first for the character to be there, but internally, sometimes the character needs to be there for the world. This is why there's a concept of like existential allowance, where if the person is conditioned in a way by their environment that they feel they don't deserve to be, it's like it doesn't matter what they do. Whatever happens, they still feel it doesn't deserve, right? So the attention has to be piloted into the conscious present, and the conscious present is where novelty literally is. You take a shower in novelty. Your soul takes a shower in novelty. You realize the past is accessible data as much as your memory retains, but more mainly the mind is kind of an evocational thing, where when it's evoked it accesses, it's kind of like it's like a satellite that suddenly accesses a field. When it accesses a field, literally if you close your eyes, it's like, I don't know, I mean every person could be different, but for me it's like this black abyss, okay, which is very obvious, like why, because the eyelids are closed. But I'm saying in this black abyss, it's like me hearing echoes coming from a far hallway in regards to images appearing sometimes. Do you know? So it's as if, you might not believe it, but I have sometimes a relationship with the distance of the thought from me. Okay? But this is internally speaking. That means I separate the subjective and objective to make it easier to speak about. You know? Subjective, like pretty much hear everything I'm saying ever playfully, because language should be only heard playfully. You hear it too strictly, you fight it. You hear it too easily, you submit to it. It's like somebody reading a book and the guy's like, it's like the person's knowledge is a bundle of sentences. The knowable, and the structure of language relate very, um, I don't know how to say it. Language is maybe that probe we send into the unknown. Maybe it's the greatest artwork of consciousness, to, in some sense, connect a subjective value to an objective image. I don't know why I find that incredibly fascinating. It's as if, like, before the mysteries of the soul, we must wonder about the mysteries of language. By the way, guys, feel free to contribute in the chat. I kind of, go in and out of kind of like giving the talk and paying attention to the chat. So you guys can feel free. I'll tell you something interesting that what I say? I think let's say there's one just like how the atmosphere has levels. Let's say the first atmosphere is the objective, the physical. Let's say the second atmosphere is the subjective, and let's say beyond the subjective. So what is there beyond language that could be described with language? Pretty much that's the um, puzzle, you know. And I find that it's a geometrical dynamism, which is a very strange thing to say because usually geometry is something we don't care about. But I find that it's so necessary behind our eyes, the need for geometry than in front of our eyes. Because when you look at nature, you don't see straight lines. You see, nature is beautiful, you know. But if you were kind of relating everything to a straight line, it's deformed, like it's kind of messed up and twisted, right? So the thing is that the imposition of the straight line was the symbol of the mind of man. Literally, it's a precision. It's like your mind, your consciousness harbors within it a sort of geometrical precision. I find it's innate, and this occurs when we literally see where does conceptual concepts go, and it's as if I find the next language would be geometry, but I don't know how far. I'm just predicting this, right? I have my own kind of views on this, and like you know, lots of writings on geometry and its influence on the psychology of man. But the thing is, when I say dynamic geometry, that's literally like, you know, the concept being aware of itself. I don't know how to explain it, but it's I find it the unknown speaks geometrically as at least to the dualistic ego. It's like that. There's a bridge there, you know, but that bridge there's a veil in the middle, you know. I find that pretty much just like a blueprint of, like, let's say the architecture of a building. When you see it's like emptiness, design placed in it. And if you were to wonder in every moment, you know, of what kind of design is here, that's another way of saying, like, Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this enlightened guy, pretty much his teach, like, somebody just told him study yourself in every moment, and this guy went like next level, like every moment, every time. And he was like this poor cigarette salesman in India, and every time in his break or whatever, he was just wondering, what is this, what is right? But not in a kind of searching. It wasn't in seeking a reward. If you want to seek a reward, then you should kind of follow the school of thought for puppies, you know. I find that you shouldn't. It's internal nobility. I don't know how to say it. Sometimes you can't uh, not be yourself in nature. You know, it's like nature breaks you. Karma is, people think karma is good or bad, but what it is just change manifesting more. You know. It's honestly a unique situation, guys. I mean, we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Language has been sparked like fire. That means we're dancing in our own flames. We're dancing in our self-generation. And I'm speaking kind of, you might feel like a bit derogatory about this, but let me tell you what it is. It's literally ideal worship is going on a mass level. And people, because they are denied from being anything other than the material, never wonder about the witnessing mind. So that means a lot of children go in life just thinking they are what they see in the mirror, never wondering who is looking through my eyes. How does the value of that witness arise? And so eventually, I find through the mystical practice, you come to, and what it is like you can't, don't meditate if you're still or have declared war on the world. It's kind of like a renunciation of moments of your past where retaliation was necessary, and or moments of imperfection, right? It's as if it's just acknowledge there's a presence that is the mind, you know. Yeah, Idris, the last sentence is very well written. I find like that's exactly it. But the thing is, what after? Is it after you see the face, after you see, imagine, right, like a child being born, that child having a personality and all this, and eventually going and meditating to a point, let's say, where it suddenly realizes it is like God looking through the eyes of everything. What is the point of the individual then? Right? So usually the traditional approach was like, okay, completely, it was like a evac, like literally they weren't piloting the plane, they were evacuating from material reality. They wanted to just get out of here. But I'm saying now it's become a unique thing where it requires to be piloted. Piloted means that you don't get rid of the ego and you don't treat the ego as like evil or whatever. The ego is a vehicle of the moment. And every day you think about it, the concept arises anew in accordance to your energy levels or how like certain levels of subtle changes occur, right? Yeah, interesting. Idris, I'm curious to know that for you, how do you see the third eye? I'm like honestly, I'm curious. By the way, just the dawn of Aquarian age. Welcome. Here's the thing. Um, of course, every person's experiences are their unique plane of existence, which they need to pilot. But in my perspective, I thought the third eye was the pineal gland when I was kind of pushed. This is years ago into this kind of new age kind of. It's like I call it the era, not era. I call it like literally it was a paradigm. Literally, there was a community I found where it was as if these people acknowledged they were there. It's as if their personalities were galactic, right? I saw that in a new age community kind of fair, right? And I was very fast, like the idea was very fascinating for me, but it was the thing was it felt it like an escapism. It's as if you wanting to be like a heavenly being in another dimension, ultimately free. It's like, okay, like that's great, but you're still this too. Right? So it's as if like it's kind of like you become like Ip Man, like those great like kind of martial artists who realized peace was the epitome of mastery. That means imagine you thought chaos and power was mastery. Imagine, and so now let's say you were an immortal being, and for so many years you just did power, chaos, and you just won victory, victory, victory. Eventually, you'll be like, okay, hamster wheel. The hamster wheel thing occurs. You know, so what I mean by that is eventually you come dormant and you realize you see it's like you return to it's like all those martial artists that like have kind of attained a sort of peace where they don't need to physically demonstrate the power. Do you know that's because they're now teaching and training as they're training their inner child. You might not believe it how much in just a moment of gentleness, just like literally, like maybe take 10 to 20 minutes out of the day and just sit. And in that 10 to minutes, just it's literally your break from the idea of your life. And you just sit. Just sit and be still and chill there, right? And you'll be surprised how when the mind is still and silent, it heals itself. That's why I don't know how to say it. Nature is the true doctor, you know. Right, right. I agree. I acknowledge that, you know, Idris, the five senses and the logical mind, sure, that could be like a kind of illusion, right? But this is what I realized. Even the illusion is being directly experienced. Do you know? It's kind of like truth is thinks it's lost in the illusion, not the illusion lost in the truth, you know? Oh, okay, that's how you mean it? Okay. What who is Nataraja? What kind of is it a deity? Hmm. Yeah, so when the identity is dissolved, you know, in the attribute list, it's kind of like it doesn't matter what identity you have, pretty much when you see something beyond it, right? So here's the thing. I consider, let's say everybody was enlightened for a second. Let's just consider, because the whole universal sector is enlightened, let's consider everybody's enlightened for a second. Okay? You know, I'm saying now that enlightened state of mind, that viewpoint of that kind of equilibrium, I call it, like an equilibrium between existence and experience, you know, between the subjective and objective. Like, how do we allow what we see from that to contribute to the, let's say playfully, like, let's say the current civilization structure. You see, it's as if like certain things have to be seen anew because the past never did it right, you know? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm telling you this. For me, enlightenment is how light. Of course, I'm saying it in a simple way, but like, it's how the light in your eyes is being your moment, and I feel when you truly feel it, as you say yourself, it's literally like um, rhythm. You tap into a rhythm. You tap into a rhythm of your true nature. Literally, like avalanches of falsehood occur. You know, like falsehood, like an avalanche leaves. I find. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know, that's the thing. Is that is Here's the thing. Um, if I ask you, which pretty much I'm telling you, literally every every guru in India probably, whenever somebody asks, they say, uh, "Who is asking?" Right? Who requires the narrative um, to that? Like um, who is holding on to that painting? You know? Oh wow. Oh wow, when they separate, the universe is manifested. When it embrace, yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind of like tuned into this, kind of like I saw it between the singular and the multidimensional. You know. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of trying to say just like it's a self-reflective approach. Pretty much, it's a mirror. It's a mirror for the mind, literally, right? um, the guru's intentions or whatnot, you know. But I'm telling you, I find we don't need those mindsets, those archetypes. It's literally kind of like explorers like Christopher Columbus times, you know. Maybe not Christopher Columbus, but you know what I mean, like an explorer of is there more, but with an authenticity and a care, you know. Hmm. Idris, I'm gonna ask you kind of like a humorous question. Have you ever been out of body? Just playfully give an answer. Just give a. Okay, that's a deep answer. Um, okay, okay. So I'm telling you this that I feel my it's kind of like feeling you have never been in the body. Do you know? It's as if the out of body it's a I don't know what it is. It's a detachment of a relationship with um it's a strange kind of um oh man, melting of a certain dependence on a story. I don't know what to say. Hmm. Hmm. I'm going to paint a picture that think as if it's not just people living among us. There's ideology living among us, certain subjective design that could totally sabotage a human being's action. Now, in noticing that ideas and thought, let's say for now, let's say ideas are citizens, they're among us, citizens just like us. How would we create a civilization? I constantly want to move it towards this global picture because eventually it will head there. I mean, maybe not in our time, but it's as if, like, who says we can't look through the front view of the car and see much ahead, you know? Hmm. Yeah. You know, it's kind of playful. You can say when you're psychologically no space body, you're actually like, or let me say it like this: when you're psychologically nobody, you are actually nobody. You know, you're enlightened. You know, I thanks for sharing this, Idris, about I don't know if I can pronounce it, Najarta. Oh, Nataraja. You know, uh, ancient Vedic mythology has a contentment That is strange. It's as if, I find Indian culture to be one of the most unique cultures still involved with the psychology. Like literally, when you go to India, holy men can't get arrested. What that means is that it's like the psychological impact of the narratives of ancient times has been so deep that it doesn't want to be forgotten. And what's unique is that people, I find, based on how far their eyes are open, reality is given allowance. So imagine you watched 3 videos of something that wasn't possible, and you watched, let's say, 5 videos of that same thing being possible, as if there's more in the mind. Oh, interesting, Natraj. Yeah, yeah, but I feel I'm kind of being accurate with the thing, right? There's a law that says holy men can't be taken. That somebody told me this, and it said a lot of these people acting like holy men are actually criminals who are trying to escape the law. It was kind of like something like that. But I feel the spirit of an ideology can be used well and can be used in a bad way. I find Indian culture is using the ideas of their past in a very good way, right? It's honestly the story you paint. Interesting, Idris. I just read your comment. It's I find, first it was trying to get to a secret abode of perfection. At first, the mystical path was like that, but then it became something where it was strangely towards a sort of nullification of character, because the attention is now acknowledging more data. And it's kind of like, if I'm gonna say it poetically, it's kind of like the soul of you start hearing after you kind of are content with yourself. You stop hearing your own, like the individual dialogue, right? So what happens is eventually you begin, it's kind of like the whole cosmos begins whispering in your ear. This doesn't mean design and language is orienting the being. It literally means the authenticity of the moment is directing like how much the higher is allowed. It's as if people can't experience their higher self as long as there's a higher self. You're by definition saying it's higher. you know so it's as if there was of course I'm saying this playfully, but it was kind of like a notion of, like, see, there's 2 modes. I feel I'm being too harsh maybe, but like, let me tell you honestly what it is that when you look at the future, it's either going to get efficient or inefficient. Okay. If it gets inefficient and we notice it's going to get inefficient, then now is literally why we exist, you know, to be aware of what's here now. So in some sense, it means literally there has to be some effort. It doesn't mean like it's like Martin Luther King kind of level of like an external revolution. I find it's mainly like a internal uh, internal revolution. It's as if every person realizing that every day happens once. So then you kind of relax. When you realize that honestly, you realize the nature of the like how, like, really it's temporary. So many things come and go. Yeah. The thing is here, I think I'm a conceptual anarchist because I find that language was man-made and man doesn't know anything. I have this kind of ultimate kind of chaotic view on things, so I feel on some level there's a sort of emptiness, you know. I'm not sure what you mean by your last comment, but I could totally see how efficient life produces the sun as center. Like literally, that means um, you're saying kind of like if consciousness was a candle in the room, it's originating the center of its value. So it can put it in the sun, it can put it anywhere. You know, it's as if imagine somebody comes and says darkness is also a force. And it's like emptiness is a force. It's like you can play around conceptually. Literally, it's Tetris, guys. Evolute, like educational system, the way it's not. I don't even feel the educational system cares about education. And it's not because they don't care about education. I feel like they don't realize knowledge had to evoke this spirit of the explorer, or like what the hell's going on. The world is this massive unknown that needs to be kind of like wondered about. Hmm. Oh, okay, nice, nice. Um, I'm gonna tell you something where this is just I entertain it as a playful theory, but I kind of wondered why the religious notion of the history of time was like 6,000 years, like as if like certain Egyptian archaeologists can't even testify to certain artifacts in ancient Egypt being much older, way way older than 6,000 years because of a sort of strictness of you know cultural program. So what it is I'm kind of saying like I was wondering about why 6,000 years? Why, how the word became everything? Why was it 6,000 years? And of course, it's totally debatable in that number, but I'm like, and I felt it was as if maybe 6,000 years was when the ego was born. When the ego, the nature of the subjective, I think 6,000 years ago, the subjective evolution occurred. And when I say subjective evolution, I mean like a level of sophistication where it was, think of it this way, the mind was trying to tame this unconscious movement of just energetic expression of the body. But so what does that mean, Idris? Does it mean it's not valid? Like I thought creationists believed like it's 6,000 years. um why so? Why do you feel time means little? Plato thought time was the moving image of eternity. Like that dude was like there. No, no, I'm just playfully interesting, like because time is like like we both know, like how can I say it? Like I see time as a conqueror. I don't see it as the image of eternity like Plato. I think time is literally like this is maybe too savage, but like okay, I'll stick with the conqueror. But it's literally like um if Shiva is the destroyer, I see time as Shiva, strangely. Yeah, that could be true. But I'm saying like still the concept of Plato, time being the moving image of eternity means time. The concept has it could make sense if the concept arose in an eternal witness. Time is the moving image of eternity. It's literally like the glove of the eternal. hmm um but that's yeah, but I'm telling you, you can sit still. Literally, if you sit still for a while intuitively, like when it's intuitive, you can do it. You can go as long as your intuition kind of leads you. But if you stay too still, you suddenly notice that the subjective phenomenon moves. Okay, and the value of subjectivity is its multiplicity. So me and you have to converse like ancient Greeks. Okay, like like the Greek philosophers in the school of Athens. Let me tell you why. Because there was an appreciation for rhetoric. That means it's the aim is to unravel design, right? So it was as if like back in the day they didn't have cinema, but there was like a place where you'd go and see like philosophers kind of wondering about which ideal. I mean, like I could totally see how language was blowing people's mind back in the day, you know. Yeah, because energy doesn't have a personality, right? Anything that goes beyond I consider goes beyond the language threshold, literally, you're not a person anymore. Call it unknown, call it whatever you like, but I feel of course, it's your moment. You can't you'll know when it happens. It's like literally if you see a bird fly in front of you, it's like your experience is the validity because you're experiencing it. You don't need proof, right? So if there is a truth, let's consider any sort, it would be an experiential one. But I'm telling you, most of us are really looking at not the experiential, the indirect, kind of like imagine people stop skydiving, like skydiving is not allowed anymore, and people just start writing articles of what skydiving was. Kids are being born who are never allowed to skydive, but they start typing about like, okay, oh, this is what skydiving is. There's skydiving experts who've never skydived. Do you know what I mean? So it's so what I'm saying is the experience is where the value is. And if we consider the known world to be an illusion, of course, the only truth that could remain is the unknown. Do you see what I mean? So this is why I say it's literally about how intensely you're gripping a value in the moment to be all values. You know? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what does that mean if like when you say time is not irrelevant, that means it doesn't matter what ego the person has. It doesn't matter who the person is. The person is endless continuity, right? I don't feel you'll be destroyed. I feel literally it's like think of it this way. You know how survival of the fittest evolution was like pretty much the adjustment of this creature, like our ancestors were just more smarter than other people. That's why we're all around, you know. So I'm saying it's kind of like just like how in objective evolution you require an adjustment to the environment. I consider you in the mind is kind of playing the same game, and what that means is the subjective self wants to adjust to the subjective environment, but from the objective. So kind of think as if like um, mind looks through body, reflects back to mind, and then mind wonders about what else unknown arrives. And when the unknown is there, it's as if literally there is no language. So it's literally like pretty much what all the mystics that are still in the world, they say something like, just a second. they say something like all these enlightened kind of conscious mystics, they're like, I'm waiting for God. I'm waiting for the moment to kind of the universe take me when it's ready. You know, it's like great, but like it's yeah, every person has to kind of choose the world they walk in, right? And the issue is usually they only choose it in accordance to what the past has allowed them. But in regards to the future, it's like pretty much, I think if everybody had a time machine, they'd go in the past and tell their younger self to just assume more freedom. Would they not? Yup, I agree. I agree with this. But I'm also kind of looking at life as a designer. I don't know why. I think it's just kind of like how my eyes kind of open to intelligence. First, I feel like it was first emotional intelligence, like most children are raised in emotional intelligence. And once there's emotional intelligence, the mind starts associating emotion with design, right? So you can say on some level, even though there's a body of a newborn child, the child does not possess any faculties to interpret its environment. So it's based on the environment taking care of the child, right? And pretty much how it appears in the human species is the mother holds the baby, and it's like it's nourished by a sort of warmth. So you see your emotions are kind of hot and cold, believe it or not, right? And so what I mean is like there's moments of rage, intensity, and there's moments of kind of left alone and you're kind of pushed back and it's like this kind of solitude, right? So reality is kind of moving in different ways, but first a layer of emotional intelligence develops, and this is why this is so crucial. Children just be automatically loved by every person automatically, because it's for the sake of their psychological development. Not, when I say love doesn't mean just do whatever, it just means just care for that being, right? Believe it or not, it's kind of like strangely salute the next kind of soldier of humanity going into the future. But what I'm kind of saying is after this level of emotional intelligence, emotions, I kind of course, I'm animating it, but I'm saying the emotions I feel begin relating to design on a design level. Still no characters. At this point, still there, it's just emotional intelligence and design. So emotion in association with space. You can say space, then design, okay? Like you get space and design, kind of like anything that is codependent comes, right? So it's like after emotion becomes aware of space, let's just say emotion goes to design. I'm kind of like uh, stretching the metaphor a little too far. But I find that there's an emotional intelligence. The mind first becomes just pure design. And after being pure design, eventually by noticing individual patterns move, it identifies it with itself. So kind of like how the cell, like when you see the cell of a child, like if you, like as a doctor, kind of in an ultrasound or something, like of course at the very early stages, it's like a cell, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say copy paste, but but it's kind of like it creates itself into a more strengthened collective, let's say, into like forming into greater tissues, I guess. Of course I should brush up on my like medical sciences, but like anyways, what I'm saying is eventually something is developing. So this is the thing. This is why if you, when the self goes to the guru and say, Guru, what do I do? And then the guru says, be content with the world, kind of accept or like your true nature, or just watch the moment or be still, which is all the same, same kind of intention, right? Eventually the person will realize it's acceptance with what is. Right, so anytime you have resisted something, at some like slow hand clap for how um, fascinating your intellect is, but at the same time kind of like boo the fact that like boo the fact that it's like some patterns are best left never touched, I find. This is why when I say kind of you pilot your consciousness as your whole plane of existence, you actually start from a state I find where the attention is attributeless. When I give these talks, I literally don't, it's kind of like stepping into an empty room. And then as I'm in that empty room, it's kind of like if the mind was a sort of kind of a sort of intelligence that translated and received its environment and could somehow distinguish if there were different kinds. I don't know. It can, it's kind of like infinity and then infinity plus one. It doesn't matter, it's still infinity. All right, Idris, I'm going to read your comments now. Hold on. Um, Very interesting, Idris. I just got to it. Um, Here's the thing. I'm saying, like, how can you see a fully be certain about a pattern when it's in an endless landscape, right? So I'm kind of saying that it's as if at some point it moves towards the inconceivable end. No, no, no. I understand. Mathematical language has a unique sophistication, right? It doesn't mean mathematical language must be completely coherent with the narrative that we as human beings tell ourselves. It's like mathematics is a way of it's a way you can say languages are kind of like uh, tunnels of thought, you know. So it's one of those things where um, you see it's kind of pretty much like an astronaut in space using the oxidizer on kind of like that suit they have to move back and forth in distance with it, right? So mathematics is I kind of see it in I kind of see the story like the just like how religion paints a story. I could see how zero goes to infinity, you know. You know, there was this thing, Andrew Wales, you said something, Idris, about uh, but the mathematical reality of chaos is higher mathematics that our limited human brain thinks that it is chaos. You know, if you know Fermat's last theorem was this kind of unique thing where um, Fermat claimed that he had a proof for this, you know, and Andrew Wales solves this and it's a millennium question, I believe, and so pretty much they give him $1 million, I think. And they asked Andrew Wills, could Fermat solve it? And Andrew Wills said, I don't think so because I totally solved this with a new branch of mathematics that developed after Fermat's time, right? So we got to realize whether I find science's bold approach is literally like a kind of imagine Greek general commanding the army's force. For me, science is I define it as mighty, you know. But I'm telling you, the thing is, it updates. So if it updates, that means every point will become limited in accordance to the new wave of data. So it is true. There's many ways the world can be seen, just like how you can buy many types of glasses in the store. But it's kind of like wondering where the value of the experience is and realizing there is a kind of uh, a kind of space between the value of an experience and the value of a concept upon an experience, a sort of ideological mask upon the experience. I'm mainly in these talks trying to point to that ideological mask. And that ideological mask is how attention is being directed. So you're kind of like, oh man, life, why is karma giving me an ego? Which I have to now get enlightened from. And you suddenly realize, wait, it's like from an instant value originates, right? So for me, eventually, because it's inconceivable, it is instantaneously true. I don't know how to say it, but there is something there where in an instant it's as if no space, no time, no story, no character, no ego, da da da. It's just a kind of presence. The presence pierces through the veil of thought of the personality, and that presence is a return, as the ancients would call it, a sort of divine remembrance. In kind of like how yoga they would say, the yogi needs to find his divine remembrance, kind of like become aware of the impressions the being has or harbors or brings forth, right? So I'm just telling people, it's like every person is experiencing life. You're the experiencer is in the driver's seat, but I'm just saying that as we're experiencing reality, we have moved to an era where language is orchestrating our value. When words are heard, there's react too much reaction to it. That means a sensitivity to an identification that we're still a thought, right? So it's like there's some kind of emotions that may arise from the, let's say, playfully from the ego, and there's some emotions that arise not from the ego. It's just like it's literally an awareness to awareness. You notice how the data is not you, and it's like, whoa, you see. I'm just reading your comment, Idris. Hold on. Yeah, I kind of feel like I agree with I kind of feel like we're looking at a similar thing, you know. But I want to also evoke a need to attend to this 8 billion-year-old science project that's going on. And that's what I kind of realize. It's like I say it sometimes, after you live for yourself for a while, it's as if you're like, okay, it's like you realize the system's design is more interesting to kind of contribute to that. And if nobody does that, if everybody wants to just entertain themselves to death through, like a sort of inefficient life of hedonism, like that's to definitely be a road that can be walked on. But I think there must be a better way. That means it's kind of like, if you can't change the past, just add a new dimension where the future is free. you know So I don't know how it's going to happen, but I feel like it has to do with people just wondering. The explorer it has to be set free. It's as if this is what I'm saying. We need new human explorer rights. So we need to now care for the inner phenomena as much as we care for the outer, and to see how much of it is the voice of the environment, how much of it is the voice of, let's say, the abstract storage system that's your memory. And so it's kind of like, um, presence is a modern update. Literally your phone is connected and it's like it's updating, or charging, you know. So it's that's how I find that moment where there is a sort of instant of, let's say, connection. I'll give it a verb, but it's like, in that moment, it's one of those things where I consider it like this, Idris. You see, it's, I say this sometimes: wisdom is the last refuge of the ego. So what I mean by that is that this is why they said it was kind of strange in Zen, how they said it's like, it's not just desires you got to get rid of, but it's fear. It's literally, um, the dualistic wheel is karma. As long as you're a character in a world, there's karma. It's like, what can you do about it? But I find that presence is much more profound, and it's such a personal relationship, and it's eventually it's I find, I don't know, at least in my experience, it appeared as if, kind of like how the generals would say, you must serve before you can command. What does that mean? That means I wondered, okay, that means you got to study what your mind is and comprehend it. Kind of like you got to learn the vehicle and then enter it, right? So I kind of wondered about what I knew, what I didn't, and eventually I realized it's not about knowledge kind of being stored, in a file cabinet of memories. It's more about a dynamism. It's like when something is important, your intelligence arrives. It's like nobody's stupid in an emergency. So that's what I'm saying. It's the importance that evokes, and how are these like incredible entrepreneurs, like Elon Musk and, Gary Vaynerchuk, who else? There's many, right? How are these people doing it? It's kind of like their kind of effort, you know. Yeah, could be, but a lot of phenomena occurs without context. Like, I don't know how to say it. A lot of things appear as responses, as if, like, how can you have a personality then if you're meant to, um, work with one code of, kind of internal ethics. So I don't know how to say it, but it's, um, I find, depends where your allegiance is. If you're more inclined towards discipline, precision is truth for you, I find. But if you're more inclined towards freedom, it's the revelatory kind of path. Hmm. Yeah, and of course, I'm just some person sharing thoughts, guys. Like, don't get too excited. Don't worry, Idris. It's all good. Guys, to be honest, I'm gonna share, one story, and, there was a certain feeling I had with the talk that I'm just gonna finish that off. So Idris, thanks for sharing very like incredibly thought thought provoking kind of statements. You know, I'm definitely gonna look at them again. And thanks, guys. So here's the kind of approach, I guess. You learned language, you adopted it. That means there was a moment where it was just a present witness. That present witness is the enlightened state, similar to how many, I don't know, but how can I tell you? It's like many yogis will tell you it's like similar to being like that. It's a sort of strange innocence that is a contentment with how it opened its eyes in the world, right? And I find it's every person has to kind of uh, explore the unknown, discover the kind of designs appear to them, and eventually all these designs should go to some sort of library of advanced kind of studies of the mind or advanced communication, you know. And it's kind of very here. I gotta find it. Hold on, guys. We're gonna go into some deep. There was a person named Attar of Neshapur. He has a next level code, and of course, I have access to the English translation of it, but it's enough for me to kind of share. Like I feel it still gets the point across. Um, hold on. Sometimes ancient, like poetic hymns are kind of like you can say they're like Rubik's cubes of their own. Okay, here it is. Jesus, that's not the full code. Okay, here it is. So this quote from a guy, I'm not sure about the exact date, but I think it's like, I don't know, maybe like 700 to 900 years ago. Um, this ancient kind of, I guess I can't say ancient, but this poet, uh, listen to what he says. The home we seek is in eternity. The truth we seek is like a shoreless sea. Imagine a sea with no shore, endless. The truth we want is endless. The home we want is eternal. He says the truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, of which your paradise is but a drop. That means your ego's heaven is a drop in the kind of endless truth of the ocean. This ocean can be yours. Why should you stop, beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? The secrets of the sun are yours. Okay, I'm gonna pause here, guys, because I gotta I think I went I fast forward. So here's the thing. He's saying like where we want to go is this eternal vision. Imagine the truth we want is like this endless vision, and the ego's vision is kind of like a drop in that, like a tiny. Our heaven is like a tiny part of percentage of the whole cosmic, wonder. And he says this ocean can be yours. That means if you have to realize that if you impose the separation, if you take it off, it can all be yours, you know. And he says, why should you stop beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? Which I feel, and it's his indirect way of saying um, the fear that comes from the temporary. Why should you constantly? I don't know how to say it, but it's like the fear of change. Attar says the secrets of the sun are yours. What that means is don't worry about it, you're all good. That means you have access, to the presence of the universal sector. Uh, he says, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. Turn to what truly lives, reject what seems. Which matters more, the body or the soul? Be whole, WHOLE, desire, desire and journey to the whole. Yeah, like this guy was I'll definitely call him a poet. Yeah. But here's the thing, guys. That's the thing. It's either a separation from the truth or you're being the truth. You know, it's like it's kind of hilarious. You go on top of the mountain and then you see, okay, where else can you go? You come down the mountain. So imagine a kind of oscillation between you thinking you're an individual being and you suddenly thinking you're a collective being. I find it kind of strange. I saw the caterpillar and playfully I'm like, wow, the soul of this caterpillar experienced walking with legs and then went into the cocoon and, through metamorphosis became the butterfly. And now it's experiencing the sky like it learned from its legs. Now it can learn from wings. So I thought like interesting and opposite, a jump of transformation of intelligence. So as if evolution was in accordance to the will of the caterpillar, to enter the cocoon. If the caterpillar never entered the cocoon, there would be no transformation, right? So that's the unique thing, right? I felt like, okay, what if we applied the same model of nature that we see to this playful model to, like, what if to the human metaphysical kind of position? And what that means is, like, if we are right now like the caterpillar experiencing its legs, it's something like, of course, guys, hear this very playfully what I'm saying. I'm just entertaining the idea. Like Aristotle says, it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. So, kind of like watch what I'm saying as if it's a projection, as if we were all in a room. It's like a three-dimensional light projection. That's a good way of going about it. But anyways, the caterpillar's side is man being in a world. I feel maybe that beyond this physical existence, we will be a world in man. So literally, it's as if minds and kind of individual consciousness and collective are kind of switching places, which is another way of me saying oscillation, like the vibration between. So, it's kind of like at some point the meaning of life is your own clay you shape. But on another level, it's like, what if this clay could help the engines of civilization, become more efficient? So it's literally, I'm starting to see a need for people's inner realities to at least create in a creatively free way to be contributed, because it's like you can say what a person, all the words you have spoken so far as a human being is all the times you have had internal patterns which you've externalized. You know, you've literally cherry picked ideas, because I personally consider like it's when I speak, it's like, don't think it's just these ideas one by one coming. It's like a lot of like, it's like thought is like, the mind is like a river of thoughts. I don't know how to say it. You know, I've called it streams of consciousness too, but river of thoughts is more badass. You know, and it's like because of its intensity, because sometimes the speed of thought can change the objective perception. You might, like, this might sound ridiculous, but I feel like when man has a relationship with objective reality, that he's separate, instantaneously he reflects the same. So he has a relationship with his thought, that his thoughts are separate than him, but because when he speaks it's the thought, so he thinks he is the thought, right? But in silence, you don't think you're the thought, you see your distance. But when you speak, it's as if like, oh, I'm suddenly the words I've said. But behind it, it's like this unknown vastness, you know? So, so that's what I'm saying. That unknown vastness is like moments where you, like I said, like you experience like the way you're piloting your attention, you experience your either body that's howling, like this brain that's projecting like the moment is a mind, or you're the mind projecting the body. So you see the different variations. And when you feel more like you're a mind than a body, you feel more like you're a field of intelligence than the opposite of feeling like the intelligence is arriving from a particle in a space, right? So ego is kind of thinking this tiny percentage of our attention is everything. And the true presence is the acknowledgement of the unknown. And that's the wondrous part. That's the exciting part. You know, enlightenment wasn't that exciting. The unknown was, you know. Enlightenment is nice, but like it eventually you'll realize the unknown has to be acknowledged. And the unknown, if it's acknowledged with too much of a story, it'll be like silly. You'll have silly reflections. But when it's you gotta find first an honest world to live in, and just abide by your nature. Give yourself a chance to see if you were really who you were. Who would you be? That means literally, kind of Lao Tzu says, action through inaction. Because only when you don't accept where you are now, you want to be somewhere else. And this doesn't mean stay where you are forever. It doesn't mean stop progressing. It just means the internal contentment requires a sort of stillness. Sometimes, like, you might not believe it, but I had a moment where I was in such an altered state of consciousness that there was an overload. It was the first time I experienced it. Usually, like, at least the experience of my thoughts was like, I've experienced like thought streams, or like, you know, certain let's say thought beams. That's a good way of saying it. You know, that are like, they go at an incredibly, you know, fast speed, to a point where the thought goes so fast it becomes like multiple images. It becomes like endless parallel realities of its original meme, or let's say design, right? So I've noticed the speed of thought, right? But there came that moment I'm telling you about, where it was an overload, was when it was literally like the dam was breaking. You know, like that moment in Lord of the Rings where the tree guys are kind of like destroying the dam. You know, it was like one of those kind of intense, you know, experiences. But what it was literally, I was receiving so much data that I realized my automatic kind of conditioned reactive nature to respond to data. Imagine like you respond to the first couple waves of data, but it's endless waves of data coming. You know, what it means is, like, imagine talking to one person, you say something, they say something, you throw a wave of data, they throw a wave of data, you know. But imagine now you're in a room and there is literally like 8 billion waves of data, being exactly 8 billion people talking to you at the same time. You know, so I'm telling you what the whole is the whole thing is, it's like the noise. The issue with civilization is the subjective noise, not the outside noise. You know, people are free to party, but I'm saying, but I'm saying that in some sense, the subjective noise has gotten out of hand. And this subjective noise has gotten so out of hand that it's made people feel that They either have to, it's either they're kind of falling towards nihilism, or they're being pulled towards enlightenment. Like it's like I started to notice a pattern. I'm like, what is, it's like, what is the, what is the moment doing? So so anyways, this notion, even Terence McKenna, I'm not the first to speak about this kind of stuff, by the way. But I speak about it in a way where I know, I like, it, it's different. It's very, how can I say it? But anyways, Terence McKenna says this thing where it's not just like the this strange concept of, um, rather than kind of like, how would I say it? A sort of entering of the mind by being it. And it's a very strange but profound concept. Presence, your presence is like, just, it's how your experience is directing your attention to value, whether you consider it subjectively or objective. There's this kind of intense story, guys, like I'm going to share it. It's worth sharing. This story is about like this warlord, okay? This warlord that back in the day, like in, I don't know, like in let's just say back in the day in Japan or something, decided to kind of kill all the Zen monks or something. And as if like he felt they were useless. He felt like they were literally like just objects. And so when this happened, it was as if like all the young monks in the monastery were like, "Oh my God, this fucking conqueror is coming up. Let's get out of here and go to the mountains and meditate." You know. So many of them, all the monks left the monastery until one day the general comes to this town where one person was there, kind of attending. Like, I don't know, someone who came to brief the warlord. He tells the warlord something strange has happened. There's this really old, not really old, but like this old Zen monk kind of sitting on the grass of a monastery, and he's smiling or something, let's say, or he's just probably not smiling. But it's like he's there, present, and it's as if nobody's killing him, maybe because of like his senior, like his respect, that like he's older, something strange is going on, right? So the warlord gets angry that nobody's killed this guy yet, right? So he grips his sword with utter rage, as if like, what? It's like, how is this guy here? It's as if I think he's afraid of monks. But anyways, it's like he sees the monk, right? And he shouts in front of his entourage and everything. And he shouts and he says, "Monk, come here," right? And the monk stands up and slowly walks very, very peacefully, as if like not alarmed by anything, all the people who can kill him right now. He just walks. And he walks and comes there, and the warlord walks closer to him. And the warlord, with such wrath and rage, as if like he's as if he feels he's the ultimate power of the moment, as if he feels he's literally the god of the moment. The god of wrath, let's say. Let's go Greek mythology route. So so anyways, I mean, it wouldn't be the god of wrath. It's a story set in Japan, man. Anyways, guys, but the thing is, like, he goes up to the monk and he says, with utter rage and anger, he says, "Do you know who I am? I can have my sword in your stomach in an instant." And it's like utter silence, as if he's saying, "I can erase you in one moment." And this is the strange thing, where the monk very peacefully, as if like, uh, the part of him that is speaking now can't be touched. You know, he looks at the warlord and says, "Do you know who I am? I can have your sword in my stomach in an instant." And it's very intense because he's saying that it's as if he's found his presence, so the personality is as temporary as the world is. You see what I mean? It's like many things start and many things end. So really what we're left with is who we really think we are is an attention. The body changes, like, you don't have the same physical body as you had years ago. You don't have the same, per se, um, you because you've experienced more, whatever personality you was in your childhood, or whatever way you navigated your attention, it's extended, right? So literally it's like you don't have the same, you're not the same person, even you're not the same subjective self and the same objective self. So what are you? And this is the unique part, where I find it suddenly we put the spotlight, the collective stuff, like we kind of the collective civilization pays attention to this, that we start realizing, whoa, it's our waking state. It's a relationship with, literally, it's like people's minds is being undervalued because of the consideration that the unknown's not important, knowledge knows now. It's there is some part of comprehension and learning where you can say it's static. You're kind of looking at pictures, endless pictures, you know. And there's another path I find where it's dynamic, and that dynamism is not arising. It's literally the mode that arises when you're more interested about the question than the answer. Because the answer is like, okay, we painted a picture in the moment, what next? But the question is still, because it hasn't been answered, keeps the concentration on the unknown to some degree. And we have to animate it. That's the fascinating thing. This is why I'm saying it's literally like, you know, the psychologist, the philosopher, and the scientist gather together. It's like there's an allegiance between their kingdoms. Because there requires explanation on some levels. Sometimes I can see how life can be hard for a scientist, because you're bringing this very valid, true experimental evidence to a community or a group of creatures that consider are conscious, like they remember their dreams and they have imagination and they make art. So it's like great, but a lot of inspiration arises from uh, attempts at the unknown, you know. So that's the thing that I feel is missing from the civilization. It's not just even people. Okay, take people to just self-awareness. Great. It's like after you're aware of self, you'll suddenly realize why there's something else here. You know. It's honestly, I find, based on your ability to see what is there. Kind of like Henry David Thoreau says, it's not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see. And I believe I mentioned this earlier even. But it was Will Durant says even something like even a bit more next level. He says, knowledge is the eye of desire and can become the pilot of the soul. And I feel what he means by knowledge is wanting to know. The Stoics believed behavior was very crucial towards attaining truth, you know, and uh, I find it's wonder next. It's not just about maintenance. You just maintain life in in some sort of value. I find the experience has to extend, and how else? It's like the mind has to be valued. That means it's as if, like, if you ignore the possibility that there could be something else, like, this is why I say, like, yeah, if there's a 0.00 whatever amount of zeros you want, 1% chance that there is something else, it still means the knowledge could completely be different, you know so that's the thing. I realize the unknown is shaking our knowledge too much for us to be really fighting over truth, believe it or not. So it's mainly about this is how my picture changed. It was as if, like, on some level, sure, the civilization can always update through greater narratives, So now is the time where storytellers need to run towards the United Nations, you know. Anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.